Hi, everybody, and welcome to Randstad's webcast, Building Impact on Human Potential. My name is Bev Kay. Unfortunately, I woke up with a bit of a cold this morning, and I never get colds, but here I am. I'm a senior fellow with the Human Capital Center with the Conference Board, and I'm welcoming you. And if you need a certificate, come on. First, let me give you some housekeeping notes. If you need an attendance certificate for this webcast, click the icon shown to download your certificate at the end of the session. You can use that to claim continuing education credits if you hold a certification. And to get the most out of this webcast, make sure to utilize the engagement tools. They're located at the bottom of your screen. Using these can give you a chance to ask questions to the presenters and download some of the great available resources that will be given to you. And first, I'd like to introduce the two Randstad senior professionals who are going to be with you. And I'm going to include myself in the conversation. So if we go to the next slide about the two individuals, there it is. Sam. I know everybody can read what's written about you, but the one word that jumps out at me that you talked about when we first met is the word joy. Why should work bring joy to people? Shouldn't it just be work, work, work?
I mean, how sad, Bev. I feel really strongly about this, and thank you for picking out that question. I honestly believe that work was designed for humans, right? So that's what it was designed for. And as we've gone along, it's changed and done all different things. But the inherent joy that people have at work when they're engaged in meaningful, challenging, all of those good things really allows people to lean in. And for me, that is what makes a organization sustainably perform, because if you have individuals who do that, you just get them with their discretionary effort and everything they've got to bring. So I'm not crazy. I don't say that every 100% of every single day you should be skipping around with joy, but I do think you should have an inherent joy. I think, Bev, you call it flow. So yeah, you be in your flow to really make a difference. And so I think that the way we think about work and we design work should be created for that.
Absolutely. And Francesca, when we chatted, all of us, I want the audience to know we met for the first time like a week ago, and we really enjoyed each other and learning from each other. And that's what this is all about. So Francesca, when I look at the words on the screen about you, the words that I truly did not know what they were, but they sounded good, was convergent humanism. Can you talk about that? What is it?
Yeah, it's a convergence is just when everything mixes. So nothing is black and white. The technology is together with imagination, and the work is changing, and people do work in different ways, in different places with different technology. It's when a technology company is creating space rockets, and another company is creating a supply chain when it was just a server company. It's this moment where everything converges, which was what happened when last time we had the Renaissance and humanism in human history. So I'm hopeful we are at another Renaissance.
Good. So let's bring joy to this presentation, along with some convergent humanism. And to get us started, we have a great set of slides for you. Take it away, ladies.
Thank you. And thank you for being with us, Bev. We're looking forward to the conversation. I am going to say that for those joining, this is more a conversation than a pure presentation. So we really welcome your questions. Please send them along and we're going to have a great conversation. What we're going to cover today is we're going to look at that human potential and this move that we see in organizations to around skills and what that means and why that's important now. But we have an inherent belief, and you've just heard about conversion to humanism and joy, that skills, yes, but there's more. So the human potential attached to skills and how that relates to work is how we see decoding really getting the most from people, as well as how that works with sustained performance. We're also going to cover how we get started, because it can be super overwhelming and it can feel super stressful. We're going to learn from some of the intrepid explorers that have gone before us. So what are the questions they've asked? What have they done? Where have those mistakes helped the rest of us? And then we're going to be really practical in our considerations and our challenge and solutions. So that's what we want from you. Ask us those questions. And I'm sure Bev's going to ask us those questions too. And that's what we're going to run through today. I am going to say that Francesca and I are those people who believe in convergence. So all of these things will meld into one. We'll keep some structure as we go through the slides, but we want the conversation to be flowing.
Great.
Great. The first slide we wanted to talk to, and this is a creative genius in our making with Francesca, but really we wanted to use the metaphor of Alice in Wonderland, because when you walk into the skills journey, it is like you've been transported to another universe. So it's being able to walk into that. And as it says on the slides, we're very used to measuring people in quite a linear way. And we've become very linear with that. So we kind of go education equals, experience equals. And then it feels risky when you move out of those spaces. But actually, that is where the potential lies and how you can unlock some of the wonderful things that humans have to offer. So we're going to use Alice as we go through as this metaphor for self-discovery, where she brings logic, she takes action, she's brave, and she has all of this cast of characters around her in a new paradigm. So we're going to follow the white rabbit as we go through the story. Francesca, I'm going to let you walk through this evolution.
The white rabbit has already jumped into the tree, and we have gone from the Industrial Revolution, in which you might be surprised a lot of organizations still exist and survive, into a new convergence humanism revolution. And in this new era, which is the last 20 years, is not that new, we really needed to look at people with decoding the way they do work and not just the tasks that they need to do. And then really recognize that education can absolutely enhance skills, and absolutely they are not to be thrown away outside of the window, but they're not the only index of the merit and the value of a human being, like we've done a lot in the past. And also past doesn't progress into a linear path. It doesn't happen in the universe. It doesn't happen in evolution of planets and species. It doesn't happen with people as well. It's another myth. It's a deterministic myth that everything we've experienced will go linearly. We are learning organisms. We are not machines. And if you look at people from a learning organism metaphor and not machine, you will have more power and imagination, and really the way you work with people will be completely different.
Right. So I love it.
It's really the metaphor. It's like Alice looking through the mirror and the lens you're looking through, it's what makes your reality. So we choose to make our reality a humanistic one. So if we move on to the next slide, let's have a look at why we do what we do. Of course, not just because we love joy and human beings, but also because it works and it produces the mythological return on the investment, which is a true core data that you can achieve with skills. Really, companies are more and more looking at skills, at strength, at aspiration and motivation. And why? Because when people are in the right place where they were where they were meant to be, they go away less. So retention goes down, performance goes up, engagement goes up. They don't leave a company for lack of development, because skill-based environment allows people to move, because they are not just machines with the label, this person can only be a can of bean. You can be a can of bean, a can of peas, maybe another apple. You can really be much more than what it's on the label. And also, it's been absolutely proven by research that hiring for skill is much more predictable performance than education and past experience. So it's not something we've invented. There is research, decades of research that work on all of these. So we are really late. If you look at the white rabbits now, so if you go to the next slide.
And just before that, could we flip back to that slide? I want to ask you one question. The number that jumps out to me is the 80%. And having spent 40 years in the world of career development and engagement and retention, that hasn't changed. It's like, if I don't see a path for myself, if I don't see options, if I don't see choices, I am out of here. And with the retention issues that have always been true for us, I think it is making sure that companies know their talent and know what their talent wants. And I will say, not everybody wants to move up. And that I've learned through tons of research. So your 80% mark really jumps out at me.
Yeah, Beb, and you're perfectly right. Moving up, it's very limiting. You can move any direction you want in space and time, and that doesn't mean you cannot earn more or be rewarded more.
Exactly.
But you can move to do something else that add value in another way. I think, again, industrial revolution, you're at a machine, you do a piece, then you become the lead of the shift, then you become the engineer that manages the whole shift. It's all that old way of looking at people and work that we have got after 100 years still on our shoulders, and still at the way of looking at humans. So if
I was just going to say, I was just going to say, I think no, sorry. I was just going to say, I think there's two things that we've created hierarchies we made up, right, hierarchies in companies to do things. So I think for those of you on the call, whether you are designing these type of things in your organization or working within that construct, if you just sometimes take a step back and think about how that is for you, and as you say, there's not a linear path. There's not even paths anymore, right? So we talk about career pathing or whatever it is. It's actually wherever you want to move, to your point, Francesca. And I think the lens we look at talent through is super important. And if you look at through a one-dimensional lens, that is the output you will get. So it's creating that multifaceted lens.
Absolutely.
And Francesca, and for both of you, your slides are great. And what I want to say to the audience is, you will get the slides, use them to stimulate conversation with your teams. A great question just off this slide is, what are we too late for? And what are we too early for? And stimulate that conversation right around this slide with your team. And it can't help but give you some good conversation.
Absolutely. And from my point of view, and Sam, when we discuss this, if we go to the next, we are late 4,000 years, because more than that, because it's 2023. So it's 6,000 years that we are late. If you think about all of the mythology and all the ancient gods and all the heroes in all of the mythology of the world, every god is an archetype of a set of skills. Mercury, fast and time, Zeus, powerful and creating and empowering everybody else, the leader. Every god and every hero is a clustered set of skills that gives to an archetype. So skills are not new. We have not invented anything. It's the way humans look at humans since the beginning of time. Then in the 70s, of course, the army started to look, the US army starting to look at all of these and started to think. So not everything is hard, there are soft. And what is thinking if doing is one of the skills? So they started with this primordial distinction between hard and soft. And then it proceeded. So in the years afterwards, it became cognitive skills, core life skills. Then Seligman, talked about strength, which is a core skill that makes you happy. So that's when it becomes strength, and so on. So there has been a lot of research on skills in the last few decades, but now everybody's looking at it. So it's at the same time a buzzword and an imperative. If you're doing it just as a buzzword, you are late. If you are really looking at it to solve and decode the way humans can become better and more complex than and at the same time in a simpler way, you are in the right time, in the right space. Let's jump on the rabbits and let's go. So Sam, over to you. What do we do with this?
Yeah, I think we often, so when we're talking to organizations about this, I think some of the questions that come up, and this is where we wanted to make it sort of practical in nature, is that people talk about skills frameworks. Should I have a taxonomy? Should I have an ontology? How do I think about soft and hard skills? What you do need is you need a logical way of thinking these things through. But to be honest, whether you're stuck in an ontology or taxonomy, what you want to understand is the relationship between humans, the skills they have, whether they're both hard and soft, whatever you want to call them, people, technical, power, whatever your words are, and the work that you want them to do from an outcomes perspective. So for us, the really important thing is what structure do you have and how do those structures talk to each other? And if we go back to where a lot of organizations are today, if you think about when you're acquiring skills or when you're mobilizing skills, the way that we set out work, most often in a job description, doesn't have any of that. It will say that your competence should be this. We think you should be that. But how do you then match these things to who I am as a human being? And that's a very hard thing to do. So one of the ways we want to unlock that for people is not just, I understand myself, I can do psychometrics, I can get feedback, I can have a number of different ways of getting feedback. I understand myself, but how do I understand myself in relation to the work across my organization that needs to get done? And that doesn't have to be in one box at one time. So what you need is a way of decoding that, and you need a structure. But I think we get a lot of organizations stuck in taxonomy, ontology, soft, hard. You need a way of having a looking at that. And the next question we get is, how do I do this? Often people start in the technology space for a couple of reasons. One, because we have a lot of scarcity in that space. And then they look at, okay, well, let's fix those jobs. And they start with the technical skills required, and they create some form of frame, and then they have a governance around that, which becomes really overwhelming to manage and update. So technology does support this, but buying a tech to make this happen is not the solution. So technologies are super important, please don't get me wrong. But where we hear a lot of feedback from companies is we've bought this piece of technology and it's not quite doing what we thought it would do. That's because the frame of what you're trying to choose as an outcome isn't yet there. And the data flows between those and how you're going to decode that are not in place. So we would say really start thinking about that and how you want to set that up in your organization. Francesca, is there anything you want to add there? Or Bev, anything that you hear from right. Organizations?
You know, I'm always interested in the soft-hard comparison. And it's like we absolutely need both. And we've been saying that forever. Now I'm seeing more and more and more skill lists. And I looked at the World Economic Forum, and the number one skill in their list, maybe it was 30 skills, was creative thinking. And I began to realize how critical creative thinking is, whether it's a hard skill you're trying to learn or a soft skill. So there's plenty of lists out there for anyone to pull and say, what do I think I have and what do I think I need to get better at?
Yeah. Yeah. We're going to talk about our human potential model, and what that is and how we see that. So that sets us up beautifully.
Great.
I just wanted to go through what we believe and why we believe it. So it's not about the construct of that soft or human and hard technical. To your point, it's a combination of people as learning organisms who have innate and then learnt, which are skills in total. It is about progressing humanity and decoding work and talent, which we've spoken about. And as an organization, you can nurture or squander those skills with the organization context. So it's a responsibility as an organization to create an environment where those skills are nurtured and grown, and therefore you get performance. Sometimes I think organizations don't necessarily see it in that way. And then human centricity. Sorry, say again.
I was just going to say, one idea that just struck me is if every manager said to every one of their direct reports, which skills are we nurturing? And do you want us to keep nurturing? And even more importantly, which of your skills are we squandering? Are we not using? Or have we not noticed? Those kinds of questions lead to wonderful conversations. Thank you for that one.
Yolanda, I think you're asking which companies are making good progress in this space. So there are a number of organizations who've been working on this for years, right? So this isn't a quick fix. This is it. Here's your 1, 2, 3, off you go. There are a couple of organizations who lead and have experimented. We're going to have a look at what some of the solutions are. So I wish I could tell you in a sentence what the solution is. We're going to talk about steps that you would need to take to get the solution. The solution is having a way of constructing this in your organization, data that flows to understand it, and the technology allows you to see that real time. So Yolanda, the solution is being able to understand what humans are, what the work is, and decode between the two. That's nice, Sam. How do you do that? We're going to have a look at how we work through some of those. But as we go, let's unpack it. I think the other thing that's really important is we're in an adult to adult culture as the basis for this, right? So that's it's an important setup for this to be successful.
Great.
And I was just going to say, sometimes it feels very overwhelming. So keep with you why sometimes I've believed as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast. You can do this, and we will walk through that.
I love that.
Yeah. And let's start with the model, and I'll answer a couple of questions that I've seen in the chat as well. So let's start from the who and how. So in our model, there are inherent skills, learned skills, and motivation and aspiration or interest. Aspiration is more long-term, you'll see later. So let me focus on inherent core skills. The core skills, and I use we are using the word inherent with intentionality. It's not innate, it's inherent, because it's a mixture of innate, nature, nurture. It's a very complex way how we are born with some gifts. And it could be a combination of both. So we prefer to say inherent and not innate. They're not soft skills. They're not hard skills. They are skills, things that we know and love since we were 1 to 9. It's a combination of cognitive skills, emotional skills, physical skills, what we call hardcore skills. It's really a combination, but they are more inherent. They are more part of us, and they are the ones we always go back in moment of stress or moment of beauty. So you can squander and develop, because this is really what makes them come out. There could be personality traits. I wouldn't use hard and soft. It makes me think about an egg with hard-boiled and soft core. They are both something you want to eat and have. So it's really who we are, and then you build like the core of an onion. You build everything else on your identity, the real core skills. And Sam will explain a little bit now how you then build on them and how you get motivated.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think, Rachel, you were asking, aren't people moving away from the label soft skills? I hope so, but not always, Rachel. So I think one of the confusing things is that there are so many labels for all these things. And people use them interchangeably. So people will ask, why are we talking about competence? Why are you talking about competencies? Why are you talking about, and that's my point, is simplify for yourselves and your organization. What are the words you're using and what do you mean by them? And then you can stick to that. And whether you purchase a skills framework or you create your own, it's important that you just understand it and you understand how it decodes to your work. That's the important piece. But whatever label you are using, but yes, we move away from hard and soft, we would agree, but not all do. So just in terms of the learned skills, and Francesca's given a great foundation, but this is, and we used the pictures in the background, and I'm going to say, of course, they were generated by our friend Dali, so I want to make sure you all know that. But just as Alice has wonder and curiosity as some of her inherent skills, she also has tools that she learns. So she learns to play chess, she learns to do all of these things. And hopefully that metaphor is exactly, I find that when you're talking about these, having a metaphor in which it makes it concrete actually makes it come to life. And particularly when we're talking to leaders and organizations of how this works. So it's more related to what we have learned, what we can reuse, how we transfer that, and reskill in different contexts, right? So reskilling and upskilling has become another word that we're using, but that's exactly what it is. What are we learning? And these skills are not stuck in one point in time. They happen throughout all of our lives. What sits underneath it, and we're going to talk about that, is what do you want to learn? Why do you want to learn it? And therefore, what's the effort that will go into actually making that real? Francesca, was there anything you wanted to add here? Yeah, sorry.
You made me think that sometimes we take our skills for granted. And I know I've often done an exercise where I've had people describe a project that they're on to a team, and the team has to write down all the skills it took to do that project. And when they reflect them back to the individual's shocked. I never knew I used those things because they came naturally. So maybe
Absolutely.
Every so often we have to step back and say, what did it take for me to do that? And
it's a great
interact
exercise
with someone else.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And you're right. We also don't see it in that way. I was talking to an ex-colleague the other day, and we were just talking about getting this into an organization understanding. Sometimes skills are seen as, Sam, you've got skills in the talent life cycle. That's my domain experience. I happen to apply my skills in there. But actually, as Francesca will know, you should use me on certain projects at a certain time and not at other times, because my skills are actually in the front end of a project, in the creation and imagination, whereas other people are best placed. So the skill set is different to you're a talent expert or you've been in X industry. That is, a different parameter.
Right. It takes knowing.
I think just on motivations. Right. Just on motivations, interests, and aspirations, as Francesca said, motivations, that's exactly how you will have this desire to actually put an effort to learn, to change, to unlearn all of those good things. And aspirations is just the longer term view of that. But where is the end goal and how does that move backwards in this? So this is really how you get your compass and your action around using those skills, whether they be inherent and or learned.
Right. And also looking at how your aspirations change over time. Like I'll often face an audience and I'll say, how many of you are doing now what you majored in college? And it's very few hands go up. It's like we get into the working world and our aspirations shift and change. And every so often, I think we need to stop and say, whoa, how have they changed? And what new skills have I gathered to add to my repertoire? So
100%.
it's ongoing.
As we go through life, to your point, these things change, right, at different phases of life and for different reasons.
That's
so
right.
we call that the magic mix. It's when those three come together, when you understand that, how that data feeds into your technology stack and helps people make decisions. That's really important. So not just what data goes in and when you're asking for your employees or your talent to actually do this again. If someone asked me, I'd be like, do you not know me? You've got all these data feeds that you get feedback on, pull it in, pull it through, and in real time, you will see how my motivations, aspirations change, skills change over time. And that's the magic mix of getting that done.
I love it.
Yeah.
Francesca, I'm going to...
Yeah, and if you look I'm an example like Alice of aspiration never changed. I think what I wanted to be at 7 is exactly what I want to be now. But motivations changed, interest a little bit, but aspiration it was 3, and they're still those ones. But if we look at Alice, you can see then the decoding of Alice. So her inherent core skill, the curiosity, the exploration, the questioning, the challenge of logic and authority, and challenging the status quo. You see the things she's learned, poetry and literature and chess and etiquette. She's very good at social norms and preparing tea and all of that. And in the Wonderland, she learns more skills because she has to react with the paradox and the illogical challenges. And then you can see her motivation. She's really is driven by a desire of understanding what's inside the tree, following the white rabbit, pursuit of adventure, meeting new character, understanding different people, and solving puzzles and riddles. So now the Wonderland is asking themselves, so ruled by the Queen of Heart, is this a match for us? And the Queen doesn't think it's an amazing match. So that's where the organizational context and the person might have a fight when the beliefs, the aspiration, and the skills are different. Because the Queen of Heart is asking, all the others love Alice, but the Queen of Heart is asking, is this a match? Do we want the same thing? Are you challenging my authority? Will you enjoy it here? So let's hope organizations are a little bit more enlightened, the Queen of Heart. But in general, that's where we say that something is broken. It's like in a relationship when you want different things and you live in a different skill semantic universe. And also, if you go to the next slide, I want to underline a very important fact. A lot of companies are struggling with doing a either or methodology. So if we use skills, we just use inherent skills and learn to disappear. Or how can you take away the learned one or the education? Or why should I speak? They are still in a binary system in which a methodology has to exist instead of another one. This is not the case. It's a weighted scorecard. It's a universe where inherent skills, learned skills, and motivation and aspiration live together in one system, and you can weight it differently. You can say in this job, for this impact, for this value, in this company, we still need this number and this weight of learned skills, but we need also these 2 really important core skills. Or you can do the opposite. For example, early talent, you could say, I don't care about learned skills. Whatever degree they've got, or not even a degree, that's absolutely fine because we're looking at 100% core skills. So it's your methodology to make. It's not an either or, and it's just doing it by job and by impact, do your own map.
Right.
So,
It reminds me how important it is for around career for us to ask others, what skills do you see me using every single day? And what am I missing? There's so much feedback available, and it doesn't have to be around appraisal time, but always like, what was the best part of that talk I just gave for you? But I don't think we ask enough for that feedback from each other. And we've learned so much more.
And you can build that in, right? So when we look at data feeds into technology and organizations, we often go to the formal pieces. So to your point, either a performance review or something, but actually all the informal pieces can feed into. And as you build that up over time, so there's a continuity of time, right, that you can build up, and then you can actually see what stays, what's on the edges, and when do those things change. If you can understand that over a continuum, and you understand the essence of a person and then what muscles they switch on for different things, you will then know how to utilize them in the work that needs to get done. So it's building that up over time with both informal information into the system as well as formal information into the system. And you can do that on a real-time basis. It's very easy. We'll do 5 minutes after this call and go, how did that go? Let's give each other some feedback. You did that great. I think you could have done that better, right? If we fed that into the system, that tells us what stays and where our learning can be.
Mm-hmm.
So,
wow.
Bev, when we spoke, you asked me a couple of questions around what happens then in organizations. Are we still seeing things like talent hoarding? I don't know if you've got specific questions you wanted to ask on here, or we can talk to this generally, and Francesca and I can give a view. Yeah.
It is a big issue in the companies that I've been working with, and it's how do you prevent it? I mean, I understand, like with my own team, I want to keep my people, and yet there are times when I can't give them what they want, and I get why managers in every kind of organization hoard talent. And it is the biggest reason for talent loss. And, I did a lot of research for the book, Love 'Em or Lose 'Em. And we asked managers, did you know why so-and-so left? And they had no idea. And yet when we interviewed the people who left and went back to the manager and said, did you know she left for these reasons? The manager was dumbfounded. No, I had no idea. So I think we have to reward for talent growth and maybe penalize for talent hoarding. I think one of the articles that I gave in the offered to you is an article on that. And there's no way to support career development conversations and pathways if I feel like I can't get out from under right where I am. Every one of the bullets that you all put on this slide is a great conversation for any team of talent people. And I don't think we stop enough and ask our teams, what are your ideas about this?
And I think, Bev, I think Francesca's going to talk a little bit about the change curve. Any change to any way you work, people experience loss, right? That is what we do as humans. So acknowledging what is the loss that they may experience if they look at talent through a different lens. So again, if you look at talent as it's mine in terms of my KPIs and getting that done, that is how that's how you'll do things. I feel the same about succession. If you create a succession process to put names in a box, that's what you'll do. If you are thinking about actually in terms of the leadership of the future and what we need for skills and how people are motivated in outputs, then you see them in a different light, right? They don't necessarily fit into a box. It also doesn't mean, and again, I had an interesting conversation with a leader in talent a couple of days ago who was talking about this can be super disruptive because when you move talent around a lot, the organization feels like they haven't been here long enough, they haven't bedded down, they haven't learned. It doesn't mean you have to lift everybody out of their home base. It means they can stay there. They may have a great people manager, but they can go and do different things, right? So we know this in the gig economy, but somehow we don't take it into the way we work. We feel like we have to use secondment or assignment or move. You can do that, but you can also have percentage of time against different parts of work and stay in your home base so that the disruption is not massive across your organization. So I think there's creativity in the way we can think about these things.
Right. Absolutely. And it's critical to know I can stay in the same job and keep growing. It's what for years we called job enrichment. We're not doing it enough now. We're not enriching the job because we're not noticing what is the next thing this individual wants to learn. How can I see that they learn it while they are with me? And that's the mindset shift we need.
Absolutely. So we're going to look at 4 steps. So our human potential model is the P is for potential, and in the brackets is skills, aspirations, and motivations. It happens to be my name, but I'm just going to leave it like that. But yeah, that's our model as we go. So a 4-step approach to doing this. First of all, analyzing what you have now, and we look at if you have a large organization. Again, this can be super overwhelming because you think, how am I going to get this done? When we advise clients, we look at how do you understand what your most impactful work is that has a strategic influence over your growth and has gravity in your organization. We have a methodology for doing that, but take that slice and really work hard on that, because that is where you will see a higher impact of the reward of your work. And then you can learn and scale as you go across the organization. If you use a skills framework as an inventory, you can understand the logic of that as is, how that's critically associated with the most impactful work, and then you validate those data sets and build it over time, as we've said. So you can get informal feedback, you can get formal feedback. The data sets should be where you see those commonalities come out and where you see the anomalies. I think Francesca said, we spoke about the poor Red Queen, misunderstood character she is. What you've got now is not evil, it's not bad, it's not that it's terrible. There are evolutions to everything. So good reasons that we did that. Understand what those reasons are, understand what you want to keep in that, and then change what you want to build from a skill set over time. Right. But for our analysis of the now is the most impactful work, and then your skills framework against that, and how you validate and build data sets to bring those two together.
I love the last 3 lines on that slide. The now is not evil. Let's talk about it. And there are good reasons we are where we are. We don't have enough of those discussions in our organizations. You two are brilliant. You're brilliant.
I'm going to go through just looking at the new. It's understanding where you are, what's your most impactful work, what are the skills and aspirations and motivations you had in your organization, how do you know that? Then understanding and forecasting the to be. Again, I was saying, if you go to any business school, they will tell you that if you spend time just on your operational focus of what's on fire now and aren't thinking about the transformation and change, and then also aren't imagining and letting go, you aren't actually seeing the entire piece. So understand some of the scenarios that you want to do going forward. Then have a look at your gap analysis on where have I got a shortage and where have I got a surplus, and how am I going to make this fungibility work, and decode that with a common language. And if you look at the infrastructure that underpins that, people, processes, technology, and data, a tech isn't going to solve this on its own. It's a massive part of it, but it's not going to solve it on its own.
Yeah, and
Francesca, do you want to pick this up?
Absolutely. The most important thing is, as Bev was saying, now is not evil. There are reasons why humans and organizations do things, and survival is always one of good reasons of why we do things we do. So understand where you are, use and decode, and then really focus on how can we help people to learn a new skill. It's really a process of unlearning, relearning, reskilling, unskilling. It's a very dynamic process, and you need to have a plan of how do you help people to acquire new skills. Before you take away from them what they know, you build something else where they can survive and thrive. Help to retain and develop and connect. Interconnecting skills can create new skills, borrow them. There are people, so for example, I come from consumer marketing, then I did HR, then now I am somewhere else. But these are all transferable skills that you can use in many different domains. Sometimes, unfortunately, you have to bounce them. So some learning need to be unlearned. Old way of doing things that are evil. There are some now that it's evil, and the evil means pain, and pain means a sufferance for all the people involved. Or use technology. There is always the question of, will technology eliminate the needs of human? And our answer is, certain case yes, in certain case no, but most of the case human will learn other stuff. There will be probably less boring and less bureaucratic and administrative, like always in life. It's always been like that since probably they invented horses driving cars. And also take care of human beings in this process, because people feel a lot while they unlearn anxiety, while they learn excitement, and excitement can make you do crazy things and impulsive things, fatigue, impatience. It's a very, and because it's not a linear process, but it's a very chaotic process in unlearning, relearning, shooting up, slowing down. Do support your people. That's where HR and the business have to create a proper support to people, and not just telling people what to do, but becoming the soil and the nutrients where people can really blossom. So take care of your people during change, because once you betray them, they will never forget it ever again.
And Francesca, I can't get over how useful your slides are for everyone in the audience. These 4 statements, just to show the slide and say, which ones of these are we not doing? Which ones are we doing well? And the slide before with your B words. I love when I can make something match. I do a lot of poetry and everything, and it's just use these slides to stimulate conversations in your division, in your unit, in your organization. Great, they'll stimulate great conversation.
Thanks, Bev. Sam.
Yeah, we wanted to say things will change, and sometimes things get harder before they get better. So as we were talking about, as you change things in organization, there will be impact, both short-term, medium-term, long-term, some that you may not have anticipated and some you would. Part of this is the learning experience, and hence we say, do something, test an experiment in that space, really understand it before you scale it out across. But, quality of, I've brought someone into the organization, how do I measure whether they were the right people? A lifelong question, just going to say. But really, you may actually take longer in the beginning because you've changed a lens. And people have to now get rid of and unlearn how they used to bring people into the organization and relearn in a different way. And that takes a bit of time. The same when you're mobilizing people across the organization. If you're mobilizing them by, please go and look at our job board and see if you can apply for a job and go through the process, versus actually, hey, we know you and there's this work going on here. Do you want to have a conversation about that? It might take us a bit longer to figure out how that works, but the output of that is so much more productive. Your engagement scores will certainly go up over time. So all I'm saying is, I think there's a measurement of measuring in the test and learn. What did you learn is the measure. Then there's over time, how does this change, rather that in the moment, this didn't do what we thought and therefore we shouldn't carry on. And so you may see these things go up and down as you change the different levers that go along. One of the key reasons people want to unlock potential and make impact is obviously diversity and belonging. And we know that stats, I feel like we've spoken about, diversity brings better performance, and this releases some of the barriers to actually having those conversations.
Right. There's a great quote from Alice. I was looking last night that says, if one drinks much from a bottle marked poison, it is almost certain to disagree with one sooner or later. And we are drinking poison in many instances.
I feel like we should add that to our slides, Bev.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I think it was a great quote.
Yeah, we're drinking poison and we are asking our people to like it.
Yes, yes. Isn't this yummy?
Isn't this wonderful?
And then you want to know why they nodded along, and you kind of go, you nodded along. Yes, but that's because we told you were supposed to. Yeah.
Right, right.
So I think we wanted to just spend a couple of minutes on buy-in of organizational stakeholders. Find your people in the organization who believe this and who are willing to go on the journey. They are there. And Bev, you actually see them. You were speaking about, if you measure people or incentivize them to be the bigger, look at the broader talent moves across. You go in your organization, you'll find people who are doing that anyway. They naturally work that way. Use them in terms of how they've done that and still got their revenue targets and what have you. They are doing it. Find out what makes them do that, and then you can bottle that. So I think buy-in your organization. This is not HR's job. Mm-hmm. This is the organization's job. Yeah. So HR are often the enablers. Doesn't have to always be, but are often the case. The other thing that I often say is, do we have organizational readiness? We're still in this place. You've got to do all of these things at the same time these days. You cannot wait for a perfect organization to be ready to accept things. Sometimes in parts of the organization, you've got to create the change. So there will be parts where you kind of go, hang on a second, we're still here, but other parts of the organization will be ready to do this. Go with them, add value, be there for them.
Right. Sam, here's the other Alice quote that I found last night. And she says, but that's the trouble with me. I give myself very good advice, but I seldom follow it. And it's so true.
So true. One of the things we wanted to leave you with is there's 4 things that we think are the foundations of this. Look at a human potential model. If it's not ours, if it's someone else's, however you've decoded that, that's what it is. How do you understand your people? But have a look at their skills, their motivations, and their aspirations. Focus on the most impactful work first. So where are you going to make a big difference for your organization, and how do you understand that most impactful work? Francesca and I are happy to talk to anyone who wants to know more about that. Experiment and learn. I always say this is interesting, right? We are in behavioral science, and yet sometimes the science piece feels like it drops off. When you are a scientist, you experiment and you learn from the experiment, then you do the next experiment and you learn from the experiment and you do the next. And I always say you didn't get ta-da fusion, right? Fusion has taken a long time to understand how we do it. We experimented, we put molecules in things, we did it badly, we learned, we got it better. Now we've got net energy gain from fusion. It's the first time but they experiment and learn. That's how you make progress. Some of these things aren't immediate gratification or aren't on a 6-week sprint. You can have 6-week sprints or 3-day sprints or whatever you have, but some of these things are an experiment and learn. Other thing is scope your technology and your data around your functional requirements. Understand what your functional requirements are to make this work and get the tech and the data to support that. And your process should underpin what you're asking it to do. Don't start with process, tech, and data change. Start with what you're trying to achieve and then work the process in. It's a system that you are fixing and working together.
You're right.
I'm going to say we have 6 minutes left. Bev, I know you need about 3 minutes at the end just to close, but we would love to hear questions. So would love to hear anything that comes up that we can have a look through.
I see that Rachel Lee said, aren't people moving away from the label soft skills?
Yeah.
And
I had said, I'd said earlier, I think some are. And I think, as you say, the word soft sometimes conjures up things that they aren't soft, right? They're super powerful. They're human skills. So I think many organizations are, but many still are thinking lots of different evolution.
They are. I talked yesterday to a friend of mine who's the CEO of an organization that talks about that kind of skill. And he said that he runs an EQ company. He said the 4 things they've learned is it's about relationships, empathy, listening, connections, and camaraderie. I happen to love the word camaraderie. I don't see it enough as a soft skill of sorts, but very important.
Francesca and I often have, for those of you who don't know, Francesca also has an anthropological background, so we have these wonderful conversations, but we are social beings, right? And part of work these days is the social contract, not just the employer contract. And so we spoke about what's the environment that you have to really kind of move skills forward or to squander them. Is a social contract you have with human beings you're working with together.
And if we have to use my personal opinion, soft and hard, which I wouldn't use anymore, I think the soft one are the learned one. So we have learned to do marketing, to do talent. We've learned things. The hard one are camaraderie, partnership, relationship building. You can't change that. So if we have to use the binary, let's reverse it.
I agree. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you. This was a wonderful conversation. So, yeah. I think Cynthia is asking to repeat those skills. Is it Bev's skills that Cynthia was asking to repeat?
It was empathy, listening, connections, and camaraderie. From someone who is the founder and leader of an EQ company. And
wonderful.
So
Bev, do you want to close us out? Yeah.
We have 3 minutes left, so maybe the slides will be available. And I would say use them for your own conversations with your own teams. Very, very, very important. And upcoming webcast programming, talent acquisition, critical. Executive compensation, critical. And psychological safety, always critical. And these are available. And the conference board is always, I think, on the cutting edge. And we are very proud to have recently launched a Conference Board Insights app. With the app, you can easily connect with peers in your community, register for Conference Board events, and find the latest research, podcasts, and webcasts. So download it today. If you know nothing about it, check the Conference Board website. And the Conference Board C-Suite Outlook survey, which is always excellent, is now live. Take the 10-minute survey today and join as we shape business insights for the year ahead. And maybe my last quote from Alice, I might have said it before, that's the trouble with me. I give myself very good advice, but I seldom follow it. So let's follow the advice that all of us give ourselves. And it's been a pleasure to be with you all.
Thank you, Bev.
Thank you.